Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. This is Reservations, and I'm Rain Whalen.
And I'm Aster Lemon Party.
You know, what's funny is we're using this new website, and it shows our names at the bottom of the screen.
It's not gonna fly this time.
Oh, well. Welcome back, everyone. Now, you may be asking yourself, if you are watching this, why aren't we in person? Well, Jeremy, you can tell me.
Yeah, I'm sick. So, it's not COVID. I don't have my tickets to the Backstreet Boys or whatever the fuck you said last time.
Backstreet Boys reunion tour?
Yeah, I have some sort of upper respiratory grossness in my chest, and so that's why the voice, that's why the coughing, and so I'm trying to keep the coughing to a minimum during this episode, where we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, I literally just ate, so hopefully I do not burp into the mic.
This will either be a very popular episode for those ASMR freaks, you know, the kinkies with the ASMR, because of the raspiness of my voice, or it'll be our worst one, and no one will listen to it because they can't stand the sound of it. So, I guess we'll find out.
Well, before we jump into it, I just want to say, dude, I am, even though it was a little rocky start, I am really digging this layout. So we're using a new website, because whenever one of us is sick, we use Zoom. But we're using this website called Riverside that I heard about, which apparently is like ideal for doing podcasts virtually. So let's hope this looks good when I edit it. So,
I hope,
but yeah,
because we're not. I mean, it's recording also the audio on your computer, correct? I mean, this is like it's a dual space, just in case.
Yeah, I told it to do audio and video. Okay. So you know.
Okay, cool.
I mean, worst case scenario, I know how to upload just the audio.
All right, so that's fine then. then we're good.
Yeah. Well, welcome back, everyone. So, dude, I'm gonna be real. I'm really excited to talk about this one. But I don't know where to begin with it.
Yeah, I understand.
So if you watched last week or listened last week, today we were talking about Wong Kar-wai's In the Mood for Love. This was from, I meant to look it up so I could be prepared. 2000. Romantic drama, and it's, dude, it was so good, man.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah.
Oh, and see, there it is right there.
Yeah.
It was so good, man. Like
somewhere. Wonder if I can. Oh, there's mine.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah. People are like, I don't care.
Yeah, no one gives a shit.
But yeah, man. So. I should have known that you were probably going to pick it after I told you I watched As Tears Go By. Because As Tears Go By was rad, dude. It was so rad. And so was this one. And it wasn't really what I was expecting. I went into it with zero research. I didn't want to know anything about it. The only thing I knew for a fact, and that's because of the Criterion Collection, is that Tony Leung was in it.
Right.
Who, for any of our fans out there who like Marvel movies, he just recently did Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. He was awesome in that. And he was awesome in this. And in my opinion, better in this.
Well, yeah.
Like he was so great. So Jeremy, where should we begin with this movie?
Well, I would just start with a brief synopsis. The synopsis is pretty straightforward. It's two couples that move into this cramped apartment building in Hong Kong, who eventually their respective spouses start having an affair with each other, which is, what a coincidence. And almost to cope with this secret, of course, that they have to keep, because they don't want anybody to know that their spouses are cheating, not only just cheating in general, but cheating with one another. They start to form a bond and a relationship that doesn't really go anywhere, which is interesting, and it's supposed to sort of shift your expectation of what will or won't happen. It's fascinating, and before any of that happens, we get these moments of just passing acknowledgments of one another and just them living in the space together but apart, And so anyway, the story is just them running through hypothetical scenarios, both with their spouses together and both with themselves together. And then they sort of unfortunately drift apart over time. And of course that comes with its own ironic coincidence and sort of unfortunate timing. It's absolutely brilliant. I think Wong Kar-wai does this crazy thing with the editing that I am just in awe of, which is these moments seem to be linear and which they are in a way, but what I mean by that is from moment to moment, you would think it would be from like minute to minute or hour to hour, but it's really day to day, right? Switching from one location to another, we fast forwarded to the next day or the next couple of days. And what's so brilliant is with the costumes, that's how you can keep track.
Yeah.
Or what Sue is wearing or what Chow is wearing. His tie, normally. And her dress, of course. But anyway, it's basically a generic synopsis. But of course, if you watch it, it's so much more than that. And it's in the way it's presented to you, it is so much more than that.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, man. Yeah, so when I realized that that's what the story was about, kind of like what you said about it subverting your expectations. I fully expected them to start having an affair together as well.
Yeah.
And in a way they do, more so an emotional affair.
Yeah.
Because this is someone that they can talk, this is another person going through the exact same thing. It just so happens to coincidentally be your significant other.
Yeah.
But it's, and again, kind of like what you're saying about it being ironic. It's almost like their love, because they do eventually fall in love, almost was never meant to be, and it's sad, but also in a way kind of beautiful,
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. So let's talk about the setting.
Sure.
Because I think that's such a weird place to start, but I think the setting is very important, especially to this movie. I think you described it perfectly, of this very cramped apartment building in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Because it is.
1962.
I was having such anxiety during the moving in sequence. I was just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, and then they keep mixing up like, oh no, those aren't my shoes. Those go next door. Yeah, because it just so happens, and I love this with the movie, that everything is sort of a coincidence, that these two different couples just happen to be looking for a room to rent in the same apartment building,
right? And
they just happen to be next door to each other.
Yeah.
And it's just so funny, kind of how it happens that we meet Sue first, and she gets the room. And as she's leaving, we meet Chow, who I guess was going to the exact same place, but her landlady was like, oh, no, just go next door to Mrs. Ko. And he was like, oh, thank you. And it's just so funny. And, I feel like this film, for sure, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you feel different, could definitely work as a play, because they're primarily in the apartment building majority of the time.
Yeah, either I would say if you split I mean, you can mess around with it, but if you for sure split the stage into 3 different parts, because you have the apartment, her work, and his work. I think that would make structural sense, and it would make visual sense within the. Yeah, I could see it working as a play for sure.
But also like what you said about them, living in this very cramped apartment, but also being alone.
Yeah.
Both of their spouses, Chell's wife and Sue's husband, work long hours, which, in retrospect, they may have been a lie.
For sure.
The old
lying. He might not be lying, but she is.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the old gotta work late at the office.
Now, what's funny about that scene in particular, not to jump ahead, but sorry. But I was watching a video, and they, in the video, had mentioned that when she calls to tell him that she's working late, and when he shows up to her work, those are 2 different days. And again, this is Wonka, and if that's even true, I don't know. I didn't see any evidence to where that was true, but let's just say, for argument's sake, it is true. That's just Wong Kar-wai again, having the time and the plot and the narrative be more like retrospective thoughts as opposed to like a generic scene by scene, right? These are, it's almost as if Chow or Sue are reminiscing about these moments, and that's why they're going so fast, and that's why days are going by in between these moments and these scenes. Because there are times where, especially in the beginning, we get these moments in these vignettes of things happening, and then in the next shot, in the next location, it's a different day because she's wearing different clothing, right? Or he's wearing a tie. Or even though if you were to not pay attention to their clothing, it still works as one fluid, it's only been an hour, or it's only been a few minutes, or whatever, right? And it's sort of jarring the first time watching, or the only time I've watched it, which is the first time. Trying to keep track of, okay, so now we're in a different day, and so now the audience is having to infer, right? Sort of fill in the gaps, which lends for a really active viewing experience, because you're not just sitting and watching. You're watching, but you're actively thinking about, okay, from there to there, what happened, right?
Right.
What was going on with Sue from here to here, from work to home, but work to home wasn't work to home. It was work to home because it's a different day, right? You know what I mean? So it's like days have passed since then. What's happened, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's the way it's shot is very unique. And not to mention, it keeps you engaged just by how it looks. The cinematography is just incredible.
Oh yeah, yeah, man. When last week when you said we were going to do it, this movie, not
I understand.
I was really excited because the cinematography of As Tears Go By is just beautiful. And same here, the cinematography is absolutely gorgeous. And yeah, and you're right, it was a little jarring because it did take me a minute to figure out, like, wait, what's happening?
Yeah.
Why are things jumping so quickly? And then I finally realized, oh, he's playing with time.
Yeah.
And instead of, because I think the movie still would have worked had we watched this, go one day at a time or 1 hour at a time.
Yeah.
I think the movie still would have worked perfectly fine. But I think having, fast forwarding maybe several days makes more sense because, you know, as you said at the top of the show, they are, you know, they're living next door to each other, but they also are very alone. You know, they do kind of, they both, Chow and Sue, both have sort of isolate themselves in their rooms because they don't really want to entertain with like the landlord or anyone else that comes through.
Yeah.
So you know, so it was really jarring, but yeah, at the same time, it makes total sense to do that, you know.
Also, and I might have read this somewhere. I don't remember. I read 2 articles, and I watched a couple of videos. But doing the narrative this way, laying it out this way, by jumping, you know, days, is also sort of a way of representing their sort of loss of time with one another, right? Like, time is moving so fast that they can't catch up, right? And what you said in the beginning is a perfect end note to this whole thing, which is it's just not meant to be, right? This, you know, the whole movie could be summed up that way, that it's just not meant to be. Their destiny was not to be together. Even though everything in a traditional film says that it should, right? A traditional film would say, yes, they were always meant to be together, and that's why their spouses got together, and that's why that they are meant to be dealing with this domestic tragedy together, right? But instead, it goes nowhere, and I think that's what makes this film more fascinating than anything.
Yeah, I think had it been a by the numbers romantic drama where, you know, we see them fall in love, we see them say, "Oh no, we can't make, you know, this can't happen," and then in the end they do get together and they're happily, you know, it's happily ever after. I think it would have undercut a lot of the journey that both of them go through. You know, this sort of kind of, and maybe I misinterpreted it, but maybe, you know, this almost journey of self-discovery for the both of them.
Yeah.
You know, and so I feel like had it been more traditional, or I say traditional, quote unquote traditional, it would just undercut everything that they go through.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad they don't. I mean, you know, a part of me is sad because, as you said, like it makes sense for them to be together, but at the same time, it makes more sense for them not to be together and to just live their lives, and that's okay. But, you know, I think what you said about them remembering also makes more sense about them kind of looking back at this time as well.
Right.
You know?
It's a form of maybe like regret.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to talk about, and of course I could do it for hours, dude. I just want to talk about Tony Leung. Man.
Sure. Yeah.
Tony Leung was awesome. Like, and of course, you know, us as, you know, American audience members, you know, of course, again, like I said, the first thing I ever saw him in was Shang-Chi, and yes, he was awesome and he did such a great job. But as we were kind of talking about off mic last week, you know, Tony Leung is this almost Chinese royalty in terms of actor.
Yeah.
You know, he's such a big name and you know, like Simu Liu said in the special features of Shang-Chi that his mom was like, "Oh, that's great, honey. What was it like working with Tony?" And he's like, "Mom, you don't want to know about me?" And she's like, "No, yeah. How was it like with Tony?" And
Yeah.
and he's so he plays Chow as this very just kind of down to earth guy. You know, he's a journalist, and he almost seems like I don't want to say knows what he wants, but like he's sort of, I would say, content then, kind of content in his life until the revelation of, knowing his wife is cheating on him
Right.
with his next door neighbor.
Yikes.
And something I love, I'm going to press pause on Chow for a second. Something I love, we never really see
Right.
his wife or her husband.
Right.
And I love that.
So I don't think we see him at all. We see the back of her head. A couple of
which of course, and I love that.
It's genius because we don't want to focus on them at all. This isn't about them, and really, it is and it isn't, right? So it has nothing to do with them, but it has everything to do with them because they are the people that set this in motion. But Wong has taken them completely out of the story, in a way, right? By making them invisible.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and I completely agree. Like, I feel like had we seen them like cool, the movie I think would have still had the same impact. But again, it's not about them. It's about Sue and Chow, finding one another, and again finding this bond. Yeah, this something to bond over that just happens to be something very horrible that they both have to deal with.
Right.
But anyway, so Chow and Tony Leung he's just awesome, dude. Like, I was like, every scene he was in, I was digging it, just how he was delivering his lines, like, especially with all his interactions with his coworker Ping.
Yeah.
Like, I loved it because you could tell that he's probably put up with Ping for quite some time now. And he's just like, dude, just get to the point. What do you need $30 for?
In a lesser movie, he is the goofy best friend that, talks him into, asking the girl out or whatever, right? Like,
right.
But instead, it's just like, Chow is dealing with him, is sort of like just putting up with him in a sense, right?
Yeah.
Instead of like, because there is that interaction at the beginning of the film where Ping tries to egg on Chow to make a move on the wife, right, on Sue. Mm-hmm. And he just shuts
and
it's not like, yeah.
Yeah, and then Ping's like, well, then maybe I will. And he's like, well, she's married, so good luck with that. Yeah. And Sue, both of our leads are so, I can't pronounce Maggie's last name. I know her first name is Maggie. Yeah. But both of our leads are amazing. Like, Sue is not your run of the mill, I'm going to try not to sound awful. But essentially whiny wife, like, oh, poor me, my husband's cheating on me.
Yeah.
And we do get that in that one scene where when she figures it out and she has that breakdown in the shower, which was beautiful. Yeah. I thought very smart that we don't actually see her. Right. We just know she's in the shower and she's crying. But Sue kind of, much like Chow, she deals with it and she picks herself up and she's like, well, you know what? I'm just going to deal with it. And that's so refreshing, because in other movies with a similar plot point, most of the female characters just don't put up with it, or either very sullenly put up with it, like, oh well, he's cheating on me, I guess. Oh. But Sue just like, well, you know what, I gotta work, I got a job to do.
Yeah.
I gotta make sure I'm bringing in money so we pay rent. Let's do this. Yeah. And I think that's something that I also really liked, is that we also don't really focus on their sadness for too long. Like, yes, they are both sad, and yes, they both are dealing with something that is horrible, but Wong Kar doesn't make us sit in their sadness. Mm-hmm. He tells us, like, yes, they're sad, we're moving on, now let's watch what happens when they find commonalities. And like the dinner scene, I thought that was so so cool when she has him order for him, and he's like, "Why?" She's like, "Well, just order what your wife likes." Or
Yeah.
and
So these strange sort of play acting that they do. They run through scenarios as the other one's spouse. It's so bizarre. Because in a way they're trying to dissect and decode why this would have happened in the first place, right? This is their way of processing their grief, right? And they do this several times. And what Wong does is places us in a scene without telling us what they're doing until the very end. We're like, oh, they're running through another of these hypothetical scenarios, right?
Yeah, I didn't figure that out until she slaps him.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, like what? And he's like, come on, really? A reaction, like that kind of reaction? No. And I'm like, is he? And he's like, pretty much like, do it again.
Yeah.
How would you I was like, oh, they're trying to, like, how are you going to confront your husband
right? And
about
it wasn't
this? Like,
it wasn't a sense of when, it was if this ever comes up, right? They weren't planning some big gotcha moment. This is just like, listen, if it comes up, if, which is so strange, right? Because again, another movie would have been like, all right, let's get him. But instead, it's sort of this, and again, it could be cultural, and it also could be a part of that time as well. Because not only are we in a different culture, but we're in a different time. So, so the shame of being cheated on is probably also looked down upon as well, right? At this time,
right.
And maybe in this culture. Again, I didn't do enough research or any research on the cultural aspect of this, and I probably should have. But
yes, same. Because I wanted to look into that as well. Because in other movies, like you said, there's always like a gotcha moment, right. Caught you cheating, and there's a slew of there's two movies actually I thought of where it's kind of sort of like that, kind of sort of there's the Other Woman with Cameron Diaz and Leslie Mann and Kate Upton.
Oh yeah.
And then. And I don't know if this one really falls into it, but it popped in my head. John Tucker Must Die. But in those movies, I know they are like gotcha moments.
Yes.
And in those movies, especially since they're comedies, they were designed for them to have a gotcha moment. And this movie didn't really need that. Didn't really need them to. Like, okay, I'm going to sit down with my husband and I'm going to confront him about this, or Chow, like, honey, have you been seeing the next door neighbor,
Yeah.
And and I want to take a pause just for a quick second to acknowledge the fact that Sue and Chow both have interactions with each other's significant other, and you just know that they know. You're like when he's talking to her husband, he's like, man, I know what you're doing. But he doesn't say anything about it, and again, like you said, I feel like maybe I should have done a little bit of digging if that was something cultural or just of the time.
Yeah. Not
to say anything, but yeah, I mean, yeah. So again, I'm glad there wasn't a gotcha moment, and I'm glad that there was all these hypotheticals. And another reason how I figured out it was hypothetical again is during the scene in the hotel, she starts to cry, and he's like, "Oh no, no, this is just, this isn't real. Like this is just us talking, just us talking." And that's when I was like, "Oh,
yeah.
This they're not planning on it. They're just preparing for if they talk about it.
They're preparing for worst case scenario in a way, right?" And again, to go back to just the relationship in general. You know, it's sort of like, and I was looking over these articles. I like the idea and the wording of this. It's a lasting sense of detachment and failed commitment, and I really like that. Right, and there was another one that was they called it a hesitant romance, and I like that as well. Because what Wong does is the reason I'm calling it. I think that's his last name. I think they do it that way. They flip it, right? Wong's not his first name. So, what he's doing is the perspective on these things is usually pretty subjective, right? We're not in anybody's point of view necessarily. Which, and again, in the same article, they posit that maybe it's replaying of these memories, right? As I mentioned before, it's sort of like a retrospectively looking back in these moments, right? In order, but again, very, very small snippets, which is why they're so short and why they skip days, right?
Right.
But I like this subjective use because again, it's nobody's point of view, but it does give this sort of, and we've mentioned it before in other films, it gives us this sort of separation from the characters, from the story, in a way that in this instance sort of plays on the separation of the two of them and this sort of barrier that's in between them that won't ever break down. Like it's just it's there. You know, we keep going back to the inevitable. They're not going to get together, which of course is, I guess, the main takeaway, that they're not going to get together. But I just like the use of the subjective point of view, right?
Yeah, and it is, and I feel like it is, again, very subjective, because sometimes when I was watching the movie, I felt like we were seeing things like a different take, kind of like reminiscent of, American Crime Story, The People versus OJ, where, Cuba Gooding Jr. would film one scene where OJ's guilty, one scene where he's innocent, and one scene where we don't know. Kind of. Well, I could have used, because it's right behind my head, American Psycho. Same with Willem Dafoe, and I remember watching the scene where Chow towards the end of the movie, where Chow tells Sue about Singapore and how he's thinking about going, because Ping needs him up there. And maybe I just looked away for a second, but he looked happy when he was telling her. Not really happy, but kind of apprehensive. But then when I looked back, he looked almost kind of angry, or annoyed with her reaction. But then he's consoling her as she's crying. So maybe I missed something. No, but I also
there's also that scene near I would say maybe near the beginning middle, where a scene happens twice, but with different outcomes. And they're wearing the same clothes.
In the rain.
No, this isn't. You know what I'm talking about? There's that scene
in the rain.
God,
yeah.
I really wish I could remember exactly what they said, but they're having a conversation. He says something, and she reacts in a certain way. The scene replays, and he says something different. And then the scene plays out to its conclusion, which it threw me. Because at first I was like, did I hit my remote? I must have hit like 30 seconds back because, I didn't mean to do that, obviously. But no, it flows in that way. And again, it goes into that theory that, it's memories and it's retrospectives, because it's like, did I say this or this? No, maybe I said this and this, right? But it only happens
Yeah.
once, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I was paying attention, but I wish I was paying like hyper focused attention because that kind of threw me. I was like, wait a minute, what? He was just happy just a second there.
Right.
Why does he seem so annoyed? And maybe there was something I missed in the dialogue, but I mean, but yeah, I like that idea of this memory of, kind of, I keep citing other movies, but like in American Animals, when Evan Peters' character talks to the character he's playing and he's like, is this how it happened? And he's like, if this is how he remembers it, sure.
Yeah.
And so, and I like that. I like that if it, it's like Chow is remembering it and it was like, well, what if I had said this? Or did I say this? Or,
It only happens once, which is so bizarre. But, and this is a great transition to, and this is in a Cinefix video. I love Cinefix.
Shout out to Cinefix.
Yeah, shout out to Cinefix, shout out to IGN. They talk about how he Pavlovs us, and he does. So here's what I mean by that. There is a running theme, much like in The Lobster, in this film. It's a cello orchestral score that plays throughout the film in several places, mostly during moments of slow-mo and of moments where Sue and Chow have an interaction, whether it's just passing each other in the hallway or some sort of just small instance where they're together for a moment and then it's gone, right? So this happens a few times. And we're sort of used to the pattern, right? We're used to the score. We're used to seeing Sue. We're used to seeing Chow. We're used to seeing them interact, either passing by the hallway or just nodding or whatever. And then they go their separate ways and it's over. There's a scene where Sue is going to get some food. Okay? We see her walk. We see her walk down some stairs. We see her wait for some food. Okay? Again, orchestral score, slow motion. We see her walk back up the stairs and past this light and this cement wall with some posters on it. But we don't follow Sue. Right? We stay on this light and cement wall. And we wait. And we wait. And we wait. And then here comes Chow, who walks the opposite direction and down those same stairs, right? It's brilliant because we've seen this pattern several times, right? And we know what happened, right? But instead of showing us again, he's now teaching us almost to infer, teaching us to say, okay, now you tell me, right? It's almost like teaching a third grade or something. Like, here's this, here's this. Okay, now here's this. Now you tell me, right? And it's like, okay, well they passed each other, right? They had to have because there's no other way, right? Yeah. There's no way they couldn't have not passed one another, and so they did. They had another interaction, but now we are to infer that these interactions now have a little more meaning, right? And a little more power to them between the two of them, but now we don't have to see it, right? Now we just feel it. And we feel it again with this goddamn Pavlovian orchestral score, right?
Yeah. Now we know how dogs feel.
I know. As soon as the orchestral score hit, and unfortunately I had seen that video beforehand, which is how I learned about this movie in the first place, which is Cinefix. They love this movie to death. This and Mirror, it's their favorite.
Yeah, I may have to look up these videos and see what they say.
It's tremendous.
Yeah. Well, see, and I started to pick up on the pattern. I actually, again, I was paying attention, but again, maybe I should have been laser focused because I picked up on the pattern. Like, okay, this is important. He wouldn't keep playing this song if this wasn't important. But I was just so in love with how it was shot.
Yeah.
And the sound.
Yeah, I agree.
That cello was gorgeous, and how it's shot in slow-mo, and we follow everyone throughout. It's just I just knew, I was like, oh, this is so important, but I love this.
Yeah. I think
pay attention.
A good example, if you want a more contemporary version of this, which isn't as it's not as graspable, I guess, as this would be, but it'd be in Requiem for a Dream, where I know it sounds silly, but hear me out. So we get the hip hop montages, especially when they're doing drugs.
Yeah.
Right?
Requiem right there.
Yeah. So you got it.
Yeah.
So we have the hip hop montages of them doing drugs. We see the preparation, the gearing up, and then the go. Right. We get this pattern, and in the tail end of the film, instead of the traditional hip hop montages, which we are used to, which we are programmed to roll with, stops a few times, twice actually. At the end, one with Jennifer Connelly, I believe, and one with Jared Leto. Jared Leto, it's the gross one where you see the needle go in his arm, right?
Oh.
I know. But again, it's the pattern, and then we break it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same here, right? It's the pattern of the slow-mo, the score, and the subject matter, right? Several times until he stops. And that makes it, ironically, it makes it stand out more, right? And instead of showing us what you've already been showing us, withholding information makes it stand out more in this instance. And again, it's that, that interaction that we don't see between Chow and Sue.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, I loved, as soon as the score started, I was sold. I was like, let's do this. Yeah. Excuse me, bro. Okay. So I want to talk about the ending, because this is when we get our first sort of clues that this was never meant to be. Mm-hmm. And it's when Chow brings up Singapore. Mm-hmm. Again, as I'm pretty sure we mentioned, Chow is a journalist. For what exactly? Did I miss that? Or do they ever say?
I like to think he's a newspaper journalist, but I don't think he's a magazine journalist. But
yeah, I'm not for sure. They just said he was a journalist.
Right.
And Ping, our old buddy Ping, had gone to Singapore to I guess, write some articles, and he wanted Chow to come. And, Chow, seeing this as a good opportunity to get out of his present condition, he wants to change the pace, asks Sue to come with him. Come with me. And, she kind of hems and haws a little bit, about it. And then she decides, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to go with him to Singapore, but she just barely misses him.
Yeah.
She shows up to his hotel after he's already left.
Yeah.
And this is when we kind of get our first clue that it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And then Wong time jumps us a year. 1933.
Yeah, this time he's telling
1963.
Yeah.
Sorry. And Chow and Ping are still in Singapore. And he wants... Doesn't he want Sue to come and visit him, right?
I think so. I think that's the way it goes. Yeah.
Yeah, and he just barely misses her.
Yeah.
And he knows she came
because
he sees her lipstick stained cigarette in his ashtray.
Yeah.
And so he knows she came, but he just barely missed her. And then we fast forward 3 more years, 1966. And Chow is obviously back in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And he, just to reminisce, decides to go and stop by the old apartment. And I'm assuming he and his wife got a divorce. I'm assuming. Because we have not heard anything. Yeah, who cares? And almost ironically, Sue has the same idea. To go by and see her old landlady. And she's not staying there, right? She's just visiting.
She's visiting,
stopping by
in that moment. She's visiting, and her landlady says that she's moving. She's going to go see her daughter in the U.S., and that she might stay in the U.S. because at this time, and one of the articles I read got a little too into this, and I don't know enough about it, so it made me feel stupid. But the political climate of China was
changing,
difficult to say the least during this time, and so a lot of the movie and its narrative has a sort of overlay of this historical time in China, right? And so if you don't know it, it's fine. You can still get stuff out of the movie. It's not a big deal. But if you know it, it sort of adds a layer, right?
Yeah, you're kind of like, oh.
Like, yeah, exactly. But, I'm stupid. I don't know anything about that kind of stuff. And so while it was going over it, I was like, this feels like class, And so I didn't ignore it, but I was like, I just skimmed over. I was like, get to the stuff I want, right? Not to say it isn't important.
Watch movies to escape.
It's extremely important, right? This sort of overlay of historical accuracy. But anyway, so the reason she's going to the U.S. is partly because of that. And she offers to rent the apartment. Sue does. And go ahead.
Yeah, and the new landlord at the room that Chow rented doesn't know much about the lady, just that she's got some kids. And Chow doesn't think anything of it, not realizing that it was Sue, and he leaves. And we get a very kind of somber ending to the film.
I think, to pause, that's, to me, the most heartbreaking piece of irony is that moment with him at the apartment. And if he had just waited maybe 30 seconds.
Yeah, 'cause she was leaving too. He
would have talked. Right? And again, it plays into, it was never meant to be, right? This is not their destiny. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, a very somber ending because, we got that wonderful scene with Ping where he is playing, telling Ping about how when people have secrets, they whisper it to, I forgot the name, but they whisper him to these pillars essentially, and he goes and he whispers a secret to them, and I would assume it had something to do with I was in love with a married woman, and that's it, and movie over.
Yeah,
and it had such a somber ending, but I wouldn't have wanted it any other way.
I think that Wong is so talented in his filmmaking that he made the ending not silly. Because I think sort of a fantastical ending anywhere else, I think. To go to this fantastic, over-the-top location, whisper something in one of the holes, and then filling it up with mud, as if to conceal the secret, even though he is already, the secret is safe, right? But it's another layer of this, withholding and this, keeping it safe. In this temple, right? But it seems to fit, and it's so devastating and heartbreaking.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, man. Yeah, it's rough. It's just because as we've been saying constantly, you want them to be together. You want them to end up together. But it makes more sense for them to never be together.
Mhm.
But yeah, man. I still loved it though, dude. Still loved it.
Yeah, it's an amazing film. No doubt about it. It's, there's before we end, there's a similar sort of rhythm and pattern in clocks. So, especially in Sue's office, there's always a close-up of the clock in Sue's office. It doesn't really matter, right? It doesn't matter what time it is, right? Especially to the story. It doesn't matter what time it is. But we still are, we are constantly shown this clock. I think it's 5 or 6 times. And I think it's, again, to highlight just the rapid passage of time and the time that they don't have together, right? It's, there's no other reason for him to show this clock, or clocks in general. Clocks shown in films usually have meaning, whether it's they overslept, it's, they are having trouble sleeping, it's, in Fight Club, it's shown for his insomnia and, things like that. But in this case, it's shown to be shown, right? It's just a clock. It's like, it's almost his version of a establishing shot, which there are none in this movie. I
thought about that too, and I was like, there has to be some meaning, but well, you're right, it doesn't really matter.
No, and again, there's a reason he's showing it, but I think it's, again, just to highlight time in general. Not so much what time it is, but like, time is not on their side, and it never will be. I'm probably reaching, but that's what we do here.
Shout out to our Call Me by Your Name episode,
or shout out to any of our episodes. We reach. That's what we do.
Yeah. So Jeremy, are you ready to wrap up?
Yeah, I am.
Loved it, man. I loved it.
Yeah, I did too. It's a wonderful, beautiful, tragic film that I will definitely be watching again. I will definitely be recommending it to anybody and everybody. It did end up being shown on Turner Classic Movies, and my buddy Shep is going to watch it because it was not at the library. So,
well, and what I recently found out, it's on HBO Max.
Yes, it is on HBO Max. So, if what we have discussed intrigues you, go check it out on HBO Max if you have a subscription, or take someone else's. I don't care.
Nah. You gotta comp the $99 and get the giant set.
Yeah, go ahead and get the Wong Kar-wai set. It's definitely worth it. There is a quasi sequel to this film. It's called 2046.
That's true. Yeah, and the prequel, being Wild's in the title.
And again, it's not a direct true sequel. It's a sequel like. I'm trying to think of an example, and I can't at the moment. But
like the Blood and Ice Cream trilogy.
Sure. Yes, it's a sequel without being one. It's similar in theme and tone, and the actors are the same, and so I'll definitely check that out as well. So
nice.
What, pray tell, are we talking about next week?
So next week, after giving it some thought, I was like, you know what? It's time we talk about another one of this director's movies. We've done 2 of his movies already. Not this season, just in previous seasons. In general. So next week, we're going back to our boy Alejandro Iñárritu. Next week, we are going to be talking about The Revenant.
Oh, very cool. It came out on my birthday. I remember that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I did. When it came out, whatever that year that was. But
I was gonna pull it, but
you
I
don't have to check.
Don't know where it's at.
It's not a big deal.
Yeah, I don't know where it's at, and I'm not gonna waste my time to pull it. I'm sure Future Rain will put it up on the screen.
Can I go ahead and throw out a suggestion to our listener, Zach? When you watch The Revenant, when you rewatch it, if you're watching it for the first time, anyone who's listening, I think we have listeners in Iran. Watch it with the lights off. Because I know that sounds silly, and of course, but most people watch it, in their living rooms, lights are on, or in their bedroom, lights are on. This one, I think it pays to have total darkness because you can appreciate the cinematography more. This film has tremendous cinematography, all natural light. It's beautiful. So I'm gonna throw that out there. Watch it with the lights off.
Yeah, and shout out to our boy Robert Eggers using natural light for everything. Yeah, man, I can't wait to talk about it. This is a movie I really wanted to see as soon as it came out, but I never got the time.
Understandable.
To go see it. And then I missed it in theaters, and so comped it for like $5 on Black Friday, back in like 2017. So yeah, man, it's finally time, and you know what? I think we might have a special guest.
That's exciting.
As well. So can't wait for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so everyone, we hoped you enjoyed In the Mood for Love. Again, as Jeremy and I said, if it intrigues you, it's on HBO Max for free. Ask for someone's subscription if you don't already have it. Or you know what? Shell out the $99 and get the big set.
Yeah.
And we will see you next week for The Revenant.